Let's dive in. Welcome everyone to our December user workshop. Thank you for joining. So I'm Javi, co-founder here at cmBuilder. We're with Pedro, customer success manager. Pedro is going to be doing most of the heavy lifting today, but I'll kind of start it and finish it. Thanks for finding the time to join us today. The goal of this session is just for anyone, there's not a demo here. If someone's interested in getting a demo, no problem, just reach out to us. I can put it in the chat at the end, how to book a demo. This is a technical session more about how to get more out of the platform, more from a usability perspective, new features, how to get more from existing features, all that kind of good stuff. So let's dive into it. So Pedro, let's go next slide. Just a little bit of housekeeping items. We will make the recording available and send it out in case there's something you miss or you want to revisit. What I've come to learn is everyone likes to learn in different ways. Some people like having one-on-one sessions. Some people like to join a workshop like this and be able to just like passively learn. Some people want to go look at the user guide and find it themselves. We're trying to appease all those different folks. So we'll send out this recording in case you want to look at it later. You can check our previous workshops on YouTube. So we're starting to build a playlist of these if you want to go and refer it back to an older one. We will also include the links to those when we send the recording out. And those also are on the landing page and we call it resources. And then, yeah, so as we go along, you can either just throw your questions in the Q&A, and then I'll be kind of working the Q&A. So as things pop up, if you have a quick question, throw it in there. Or we're also going to keep some time at the end for Q&A as well. So if you want to save your questions to the end, that's great. Or you can just pop it in the Q&A. So without further ado, Pedro, take it away. Let's do this thing.
Yeah, so this is a little bit of our agenda. We're gonna start talking about the advanced sketching, where the features that it would be great if everybody knew how to use it properly, so like we can work faster and more efficiently. Lasso functionalities and bulk resource editing, so how to move a lot of resources around, define install dates and remove dates for the resources at once, how you can change your schedule with the Milestone push and pull, graphic settings for performance, how you can change that if you're using a low performance computer, or if you want to make sure that you're sharing this with people that you don't know exactly what the computer that they have. I'm gonna just dive in, go through like some basic navigation controls and hotkeys from my sessions that I'm doing with customers. I sometimes notice that people don't know exactly specific things that are very interesting to know. And then in the end, we're gonna go through the new features, where the new things that we are working on in open space for a Q&A. So quick thing about the Q&A, if you have any questions related to the product, not necessarily about the things that we are talking about today, it's fine. Just send in the Q&A. We'll find some time to talk about them in the end. Okay. So let me close this and start with my my session over here and just refresh all the sessions that I have open. And okay, just apologize for the loading time over here. And let me open my notes and let's start with the advanced sketching, right? So this is a site with like that I'm going to just start right now. And I want to talk about things related to the sketching, right? So the sketching can be used for three main things. One is to place align resources, two is to do excavation, and three is to create massing, right? So I'm going to use the sketching for these three things, and I'm going to start with the resource placement. So as a fencing, I'm going to go ahead and use my construction site fence. The moment that I click over here, I have the option to add a fence as a point, which means like I'm going to add just one single panel, or as a polyline. The polyline for resource is going to be used as a main driver to create a pattern of placement for several of these resources in a row, right? So the moment that I start drawing, the point that I click over here will be used as my sketch elevation support, right? So if I look over here from the side, let me change to move. If I'm looking over here to the side, you see that these grid lines tell me what is the position of that sketch on the 3D space. And if I go lower, you see that part of the map can be below of the sketch, and the part can be above, right? So I'm using the topographic map here. And I can change that sketch support because it will be useful for specific things like placing resources on top of buildings and so on and so forth, right? So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and start drawing a line. I'm going to draw a very simple line over here. and you're going to see that these points will be placed. And if I go into my settings, I can change some of these settings over here to help me define what is the length of those lines, what is the angle in between those lines. If I want to snap this, and the snapping is referred to the references that we have for horizontal and vertical in the global north, right? So my sketch will always be positioned to the global north. We are working on the project north feature, which means that you're going to be able to rotate that sketch, so you will be able to snap to the project north. But at the moment, we are using the global north as a reference. So you see that how my line will snap into these red references over here is just because they're getting that total north, and also some projections of other points that I have on my sketch over here. Right, so let me go ahead and close this, and I'm just going to turn this all off so we can see the sketch. And now if I confirm, of course, my fence is going to show up in there. So let me go back to the edit sketch feature over here, because I want to talk about specific things. So if I want to bring the sketch upwards to, let's say, the top of this building, I can click over here on select offset from 3D viewer, and I can click on the top of this building. So my sketch will now move, so it will be placed on top of that building. So my lines are not on the ground anymore, but on the same elevation as the top of that building. So once I hit confirm, my propagation mode over here change automatically to follow plane. So it's now automatically moving along with that 2D plane. And if I click on follow terrain, it means that the sketch is still over there, but my parts are being projected down and following the terrain. So that allows you to use different references for different sketches. Okay, so if I go back on my edit sketch over here and then go into settings, I can click on this 3D projection on Z plane, so I can see what is the projection of those lines on the ground, right? So you see the green arrow, the green lines are showing me exactly where they are, and I can move this around and the lines will move along with it.
Can I just chime in real quick on use cases? So probably everyone here has a good idea of the use cases, but one of the big use cases for why you want to have the plane be on the building or on the imported BIM model is for, say, guardrails. So if you want to look at safety factors, being able to just sketch a polygon right on the slab is one of the kind of core use cases. And then follow terrain would be like topographic mapping. You want fencing, for example. So it's going to follow the terrain, and those are the kind of two different good examples of use cases.
Yeah, I'm going to create a guardrail after this example just to show that. And before I go into that process, actually, let me do this right now. So let's leave that fence over there and go into the site safety personnel for protection. And I'm going to do a wood frame guardrail over here on top of this building, right? So if I go and look at my 2D view, I can draw on top of this, and I'm just going to go back to 3D. And now I'm gonna go put my plane offset to be over here on the top. And when I hit confirm, the guardrail is still being placed on the ground because the propagation mode is defined to follow the 3D. I need to click on the propagation mode to follow the plane, so it will move up to that location. So now I quickly place this guardrail over here. Right, so let me use this guardrail as an example on how we can also use some of these constraints that we have over here, right? So if I want to snap this line to the side of this building, I have this button over here called Snap to Face, which allows me to select a line and then select a face, and then select a line and select a face. And when I hit confirm, that object is now very accurately placed on the edge of that building, right? So other buttons that we have over here is the perpendicular functionality, which means that let me use that for the fencing over here. So the perpendicular one would be to make sure that one of these lines is perpendicular to the other. So if I click on this first line over here and then click on the second, the first line will move, will rotate, so it will be perpendicular to this one. The parallel functionality will allow me to make this line and parallel to this other line over here. The first line that you choose is always going to be the one that's going to move. Okay, so if you click on snapping, perpendicular, parallel, and equal length, the first object that you select is the one that's going to change. The other is a reference. Okay. And if I go and redraw this over here, I want to show also a couple of things related to our different ways of drawing, right? So actually, let me cancel this and delete this one. I'm going to use now a massing as an example. So our simple massing tool now is very different. I'm going to talk a little bit about this later in the end. But if I start drawing this, I can now have options to draw as a line, as an arc, as a circle, or as a rectangle. So as a line, to draw an arc, I need to draw a line first so I can get the tangent for that. And I can change between these by following those hotkeys over there, L, A, C, R, and M. So if I hit A over here right now, there's going to be an arc that I can start drawing that arc and be very creative over here about some architectural designs. And then I can close that object, right? So when I do that, my massing shows up like that. And I'm just gonna go ahead and do another one where I can click to create a circle as well. And once I create this circle, if I turn on my length settings, I can type in what is the radius of this circle over here and confirm. Right, so this is how you control these different shapes. These shapes can be rotated, can be placed in different ways on your site plan. Okay, so this is like some of the features that I wanted to talk about in the sketching, and just I wanted to use this like plain site, so we will focus on the sketching stuff. But if anyone wants me to represent a specific situation, please let us know in the Q&A. Okay. So let's open over here now a project that is completed, and okay, so this is a project that a lot of people know of. We use this as a lot in our demos. So I'm gonna focus now on some Lasso functionalities, right? So Lasso can be used for different reasons, but mainly it's when you want to edit several objects at once. So the first thing about Lasso that I want to talk about is that Lasso has a filter. So there are three main objects in the site plan. So let me go into a milestone over here that is towards the future. And the three main objects are the surrounding buildings, the parts of a 3D model that I have imported, and also the resources that I've placed to the site. So once I start dragging my lasso selection, which means I'm going to hold Control and click and drag. Now I can draw a box over here. Once I start dragging this, the lasso will only select one of these group of objects, either the surrounding beauties or the resources or the 3D model. So in this case over here, because the first object that I selected is a surrounding beauty, now I'm only selecting surrounding beauties. So you see none of the resources have been selected or the imported models. But if the first object that I select is a resource and I drag my lasso selection, now only resources are being selected. And the same thing for models. So I select the first one and then drag. I can see only the 3D models are being selected. This is very helpful whenever you want to do a couple of things. So one of these things is, what if I want to move all of these objects here at once? So I can just go ahead and do a lasso selection, right click, and then move my objects. So I can just go ahead and move all of this at once. So this is also like something that a lot of our users requested, is that bulk editing of resources, bulk movement, bulk rotation. So I can also rotate all of these objects at once by right clicking and then doing a rotation and so on and so forth. Okay, so Lasso also has a couple of hotkeys. So let me go over here to a milestone in the future. And let's say that I want to select only a couple levels over here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a selection of one object on my 3D model. And then I'm going to drag and take like these levels. But you see, I'm taking levels over here on the top that I don't want, and I'm taking levels over here in the bottom that I don't want. So if I hold Control Shift and do a lasso selection again, I'm gonna deselect these elements. And if I do the same thing over here in the bottom, I'm going to deselect these elements. So now I'm very focused on the part that I want to select, right? So this is very important because our ways of creating sequences depends a lot on the selection of parts in the 3D environment, but also on the tree structure. And we want to make it as easy as possible for people to do that, right? One of our main updates that are coming in the following weeks is the connection of these selections to a specific milestone. So I believe like in a couple of weeks, we will be able to, instead of like defining our sequence by hiding and showing elements on milestones, we're going to actually assign these objects, these parts to a milestone directly. And there will be a color code telling you which parts have you selected and assigned already, which parts you haven't, which ones are in the future, and which one are in the past.
Can I check? Can I add to that? So for those folks that are not using the schedule integration feature, maybe they are not aware, but if you do link your like P6 schedule to create the milestones, and then now you link the resources and the hide show, the last week, what Pedro just said, to the milestones itself, when you sync the schedule, everything will follow, right? So that's one of the benefits of having that the model linking to the milestones is that when you do a sync based on a new schedule, it's all going to update automatically. I have two just quick ones, Pedro. Quick.
Yeah.
There's a question from Daniel about advanced sketch tools. Will it be applied to detailed massing as well? The answer is yes. The reason it's not there already, I believe, is because we're revamping the detailed massing feature functionality at the moment. So that's part of the improvement to the detailed massing, and then you'll be able to do the advanced sketch for that as well. And then the next one, maybe for Vishal, Pedro, you can just show quickly. Can you draw a building mass on top of another? For that, I probably would suggest using the detailed massing because you can adjust. Maybe you want to show quickly how you would maybe show two buildings on top of each other with different colors.
Oh yeah, so there are a couple things that you can do over here. So with the detail massing, of course, you're gonna create a massing that that can be kind of like you create the big rectangle shape or something like that, and then you can start kind of like polishing the shape of that massing by going into the addition. You can edit the perimeter of the same floor or all the floors above, so you can do things like that. I'm not sure, Vishal, if this is your use case, but you can do things like that. So in the case where you want to represent the same building with different floor plans, this is the suggestion that we have. Like you simply just go and start changing the shapes of the different floors. But if you do want to create draw a building mass on top of another, you can do that. So for example, let's say that I want to create, I don't know, like a water tank over here on the top. I can just go into my simple massing, click on add a volume. I'm going to click on top of this building over here, and then position my building, my sketch on top of that building. And when I do a circle, I can now confirm, and then a massing has been created over there. Right, so this is with the detail massing, you can do this like more straightforward, right, as of the moment. But with with the simple massing and with the detail massing, you'll be able to do that once we revamp the whole thing.
I think the pluses and minuses, Vishal, would be if you want to sequence it. So like if you do one detailed massing to represent two different buildings, a building on top of a building, you could like color code the different ones, and you can actually link those to milestones if you want to show the sequencing of each floor. Whereas the simple massing, the whole massing would have to be as part of the kind of sequencing, right? So.
Okay. Yeah, keep sending questions. Those are very important for us. So this is a little bit about the sketching, Lasso functionalities, and also the multi-edit for resources. Another great thing about the multi-edit for the resources over here is that you now can create what we call like the demobilization stage, right? So if I go to the last milestone over here, where I see that like I still have like a lot of resources and I want to create like, I don't know, either a demobilization stage or a occupancy stage, I can just go ahead over here and show an occupancy stage. And I want to remove all of these resources from my scene. So I can go back on my last milestone. I select one resource to define the future. Then I hold control, drag my lasso, and then over here I can go and edit these resources, right? So a resource timeline is you define what is the first milestone that that resource is going to show up and the last milestone that that's going to show up, right? So if I want these resources to be gone by the next milestone, by the on the occupancy stage, I need to go and define that the last milestone they are going to be showing is the previous one. So I just go ahead and define L333 over here. And now when it's like, if I go forward, those resources are not there anymore. Another way of doing the same thing is by selecting all of these resources, right-clicking and define end at this milestone. So on our context menu, like the right click, you can define the begin stage for a resource and the end stage of the resource, right? So keep in mind that these are inclusive dates. So you're defining what is the last date that that resource is going to show up on the scene. Okay, cool. So now I have my occupancy stage defined over here and so on and so forth. So okay. Aliyah, you sent a question that I was gonna tackle in a minute, but I'm just gonna jump ahead and talk about it then. So a lot of people ask about like how to create a negative space, or like what we call like a Boolean operation of like add and remove, creating masons. So defining a block, a shaft, or anything like that. So let me go ahead and create a simple massing. As of the moment, we cannot create that as an operation of a remove. But one thing that you can do, and I believe I've already explained this to a couple of people, is that you can create a courtyard by just going in and maybe defining like a closed polygon that has a small kind of like line over here. So if I type in this over here and this over here, second. Always good to work on 2D. I'm doing something wrong over here. I shouldn't be working on 3D to draw a massing. Good thing that nobody's watching this. Oh, 70 people is watching this. Just kidding. So now I would just like bring this over here to very close one to the other and create that courtyard, right? So this is a way of doing it. At the moment, it's just like a creative solution for a limitation in the software, but we do want to create that that feature. We want to make that as a native feature where you can create courtyards, shafts, or elevator cores, or things like that. Cool. Javi, you have anything to add?
That was good. That was good. That's great.
I thought that you were gonna say something.
Well,
Okay.
I should mention, I think it's not in the scope of today, but a lot of people talk about the ability to import a model and then say adjust the mesh of the model, like split by floors or something inside cmBuilder. That's so this is the you just showed us the massing version of this. So the imported model version of doing something like this is something we're working on as well. We're hoping being able to release in the near future is the ability to, after uploading a model to cmBuilder, to split the meshes by floors and things like that for sequencing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm also gonna use a, yeah, thanks, Javi. So another thing that I want to talk about in terms of like positioning resources is also something that it's a question that came in this, I think it was last week. Like sometimes you want to move a resource or like a building or any object in the 3D space, but once you expose your handles, your movement handles over here, the movement handles is over there on the top of the crane, and you want to zoom in and move according to this space, but you're not seeing the move handles that is over there on the top. So there are two things about an object that we can notice I'm going to bring this screen. I'm going to create a copy of this screen over here on the side so we can visualize this better. So if I go and double click on this resource, that arrow is going to show up wherever I double click. So if I'm looking over here and I want to see my handles, I just need to double click at this location, right? So this is the default behavior where like you are defining a local positioning for these handles, right? But over here in the bottom, we have a part origin. So if you switch this to part origin, what's going to happen is that these handles will go and find what is the part origin. So for resources that are in our library, the part origin is defined by us, and it's usually in the bottom of the resource because that's also the 000 that we use to place the resource on the ground, right? So in this case over here, in this crane, the part origin is in the bottom of the mast, right? If I change to local origin, it's gonna go all the way up where I double clicked before, but if I want to bring my arrows over here, I just need to double click again and the arrows will show up. Same thing happens for the rotation handles, right? So if I want to rotate according to the base of my crane, I can change this to the part origin. But if I want to rotate according to where I want, I can change this to local origin, right? So this is the way to go with that. Okay, and that applies to resources, to imported models, to surrounding buildings, basically any object that is in the 3D space, even drawings. Okay, cool. So going on to the next topic, I want to talk a little bit about milestone push and pull. So if I go over here in my milestone manager, where I can see a table with all the milestones that I've created so far, or imported from a drawing, from a schedule, sorry, and I want to change the dates of these milestones by like a whole chunk because I reviewed my schedule and I have a new plan or things like that. There was a delay or I did some magic and now my schedule is a little bit shorter or things like that. I can simply click on one of these, double click on one of these dates, and this calendar will show up. And now we have this little switch over here that says shift all following milestones. So whatever change I do to this date, that delta is going to be applied to all the milestones that come after that. None of the milestones before is going to be changed. So all the milestones after. So for example, let's say that I want to change this in 3 days. So we will move all the 19 milestones that come after forward by 3 days. Okay, so I have a little special design that I created over here to talk a little bit about this. So basically, let's say that I have my timeline like this, and I have 4 milestones that are defined over there, and I want to move 2 milestones back by 3 days. So basically what I need to do, the first step is select the first milestone and then select the push and pull switch and move it back by the 3 days, the first one, because I want all the others to change along with it, right? So what's going to happen is that every single milestone that comes after milestone number 1 is going to go back 3 days. And then what I need to do to keep my milestone 3 and 4 in the same place is going to the milestone 3 and push it forward by 3 days, right? So now I have a schedule, a timeline where these 2 milestones went back in time by 3 days. Okay, so this is just a quick way for you to allow you to do these changes. Cool. Next topic is what happens when you have a low performance computer in hand and you want to use a cmBuilder and you imported a lot of 3D models. There are a lot of stuff going on in your site, and your performance is not like great. So there are a couple of things that you can do. We have some instructions over here in our user guide about performance. So if you go in and type, oh, sorry, this is not the right user guide. This is the right user guide. This one. So if you go over here in the user guide and type in and go into the troubleshooting and frequently asked questions, there is a troubleshoot for like improving performance. There are some actions over here that you can do to make your performance a little bit better. Check your graphics, check how the browser is handling your graphics, if everything is connected to your graphics card or not. So depends on the browser that you're using, but most of them have the same kind of settings. And but the one that I want to talk about today is the graphic settings that are directly into cmBuilder. So if I open here my settings and go into my graphics, we are constantly improving our graphics. And to make graphics better, we need a little bit more performance of the computer. So sometimes it's kind of like a double-edged sword, but we are striving to make this as best as we can in terms of performance, and it's already really good. But let's say that in this case over here, if I was moving this building and the performance was not good, the first thing that I do is turn off the shadows. So these two first items over here in the graphics tab is related to the shadows. So if I turn off my ground shadows, you're gonna notice over here in the slabs that all of these shadows that are the slabs are casting down are gonna be gone, right? So this is one thing. And ambient occlusion is another settings that is more related to the corners of your geometries. So if I turn on ambient occlusion, you see that all the edges over here have a shadow cast into it. So these two are the two that impacts the most. But we have other things over here that you can do as well, like turning off the building edges, right? So so the computer will stop calculating where the edges of each geometry is. You can also turn down the pixel ratio, and you can turn down the visible objects when camera moves. So what this is going to do is that you see some of my objects will become a wireframe once I start to move in my camera. But if I stop, it will go back to what it was before. And you can control how much of that percentage will be applied, right? So you see some of these now are gone. And if I just like bring this to 5%, more of these are be gone. Okay. So this is one thing. The last thing about the graphics is the anti-aliasing. This is more related to how we compute each one of these borders for the geometry. So this doesn't change a lot in terms of your performance, but if you get to the point where you need to change more stuff, you can do and bring the anti-aliasing to 0. And also the environmental lighting that we already talked about. If you turn this off, your performance will increase slightly. But the big two, go.
Oh, sorry, keep going. I cut you off.
No, just like I want to just reiterate that the ones that impact the performance the most is the ground shadow and ambient occlusion. Go ahead, Javi.
I was basically just gonna say, I think what from a practical user perspective, while you're working, if you want to turn down the settings a little bit, just for speed of performance, if you're finding things, and then right at the end when you're ready to create the final deliverables, you just turn it all back on and make it look nice, right? So that's a practical way that might just be able to help you work a little bit more efficiently.
Yes. I just noticed that there's one thing that I forgot to mention about is about the sketching, is the projection of an object into the sketch. And I'm just gonna go back over here and create an excavation step and go and place this excavation over here. So I'm gonna click on project on from 3D, this little button over here. And from this, I can select a shape. I just selected this shape over here. And that shape was gonna be casted down so I can take and do an excavation from that shape, right? This is super useful whenever you're doing excavation for detailed excavation for foundations and things like that. You won't need now to draw every single shape. You can just select it and project it down. And when I hit confirm, that excavation showed up over there, and it has this little line over here because it's the line that is missing from this polygon, right? So this is super useful when you want to create excavations faster, right? So if you have like a slab on grade that defines the whole chunk of your the floor plan of your excavation, the projection of your excavation, that's an amazing selection that you can do. You just take that part and project it down. Okay.
One thing too, just we're getting real-time coaching here, which is great. Another option is for the settings and performance is to just we did create something that's fairly new, is we just created the idea of kind of best performance recommended best quality. So you can, if you're not sure, just pick one of those and see if it helps. So you know, instead of toggling stuff all over the place, you can just choose that, especially if you have maybe a superintendent or project manager is less software technical, just pick one of those and hope for the best.
Cool. Cool. Thanks, Avi. Yeah, so I'm gonna move now to some basic functionalities that I've noticing that sometimes people don't grasp it about it right in the beginning. So I'm gonna go through them super quickly. So navigation controls, you don't need to use these buttons over here, these ones in the bottom, if you don't want. So all of our navigation can be done using just the mouse, right? So with your left click, you can rotate, and with your, I've noticed some users doing this. With your right click, you can move your view, right? So, or you can hold space and then do the left click, and it's gonna have the same effect, right? And this is very useful because you don't need to keep clicking on the pan button all the time. In the zooming function, we have recently created a new functionality for this. You have to, for the moment, you have to turn it off. Oh, actually, you don't need to turn it off again anymore. It's basically, it's over here in the navigation controls. By default, it will be a zoom to the center, but you can also zoom in by the cursor, right? So it means that whatever your cursor is, you can zoom into that specific location, right? So this is a way for you to navigate and move things around faster, but also keep in mind that you can always middle click with your mouse to define whatever is the zoom center in rotation. So if I middle click on this hoist over here, now my rotation is according to that hoist. So this is super helpful to use both, because sometimes when you have like models that has a lot of stuff inside and you want to go into enclosed space, using the middle click will help you navigate according to specific locations. For example, if I want to go and navigate according to this stair over here and I want to go down the stair, I can middle click and then zoom in that location and then move exactly what I want to move, right? And rotate according to like a column or so on and so forth.
So I think
Okay.
for new users, you might not even have known that because we made this default recently, but it's more for like if you've been on the platform for quite some time, you might not even know that we have this option now to use what we would call more traditional CAD BIM mouse controls, which is so feel free to swap that over and you can go from there.
Yeah. So the first one, like the zooming to cursor, it's more, it's faster for you to zoom around things, but sometimes you can go inside geometries that you don't want and things like that. And the zooming to center is more constrained, but you have more control, but it's a little bit slower for you to move around. Okay, and another thing that I've noticed that also like from users is like they try to zoom in a specific location and then the zoom starts to get super slow. It's just because it's something called like their harmonic zooming, where you start getting closer to the geometry that you selected as your center. We reduce the increments of the zoom, so you won't like go through that quickly, but you can just reset that by middle clicking and then zooming in and zooming out again. Cool. So a couple of short hotkeys that is super interesting to learn. The first one is control arrow left, control arrow right. So this will navigate through your milestones. You see that my mouse is not clicking on the arrows over here, but I'm still flipping through my milestones because I'm holding control and then hitting the arrow left and right, right? So this is super super helpful for you to understand the sequence quickly. You just keep like moving through these like fastly, and so on and so forth. Another thing that we also implement recently, if I go over here my key shortcuts, you can see that it's the lock features, just like Ctrl Shift L. You can lock a specific resource or a piece of imported models or things like that. But also the minimize, open and minimize model browser. A lot of people don't use the model browsers that much, but it's super important because this is where your a list of all the parts of your site lives, right? So if you hit Alt key and Alt Q, sorry, and it will open and close. And site plan is where you're gonna see a list of every single thing that is on the site plan. And beauty models is a list of everything that you imported from another BIM software, right? So we are currently working on the new on new shortcuts. So please let us know what are the things that you would like to have a hotkey for, right? So you can let us know on the Q&As over here. And this is my YouTube moment. So hit like, subscribe. Yeah. Just kidding. Okay, I think that this is everything related to like these small tips that help you like move faster with your plan. And Javi, if you don't have anything to add, I'm going to jump into new features.
But before you go, I think one thing, you just kind of gave me an idea. So you just showed how that there's one single view for all the resources. So if you open up the tree again real quick. So you see that you have site planning, and this is where like everything that you're adding from the catalog of resources is going here. For those who don't know, you can also view this in the resource schedule. We don't need to go too deep into it, but we do get this more and more lately. A lot of people don't even realize this is here. So the resource schedule can be pretty useful when you built out like a whole bunch of, you built out like 100 milestone sequence. It's basically just grabbing every like instance of a resource that's been placed on the map and when it showed up and when it left. So if you just want a global view, a quick global view of all the temporary resources you're going to use on a job, it's actually being recorded here automatically. So then you can export this to Excel. So it says share, but you can export this to Excel.
Yeah. Just
in case you wanted to. It's just kind of like something where we're going to continue to improve the functionality of it, but it's one quick way at the end of the site logistics plan where you want to bang out all the resources, you go from there.
Yeah. And we are going to expand this the functionalities of this view more. We kind of like trim down to just show you like a list of all the resources. And if it's a linear resource, like a fancy, for example, you're going to see a count of how many panels you have for that, the number of weeks, start, end date, and category. But if later in the future, we want to bring more and more functionalities to this. Okay.
All right, let's move on to the next one.
The next chunk of work over here. So let me delete this cut that I just created and the massing that I created over here. So recently, I think it was this week or the last week, we pushed the zone draping functionality. So a lot of people were asking about like, hey, I'm working with a topographic site and the zones are just like planes that are hovering on the top of the ground. How can I make the zone like become part of the terrain? How can I make it be adjustable to the terrain, right? So one thing that we can do is right now is going to the project setup and click on zoning, right? So the zoning over here, we have some suggestions of zones that you can use. You don't need to follow exactly the color code that is here, but like, let's say, for example, that I want to create a loading area. I can start drawing a loading area at this location over here. And that loading area actually is now being projected on the ground. So there is like a plane that is our reference plane, and now all the parts of that plane is being projected down on the ground. And I can change my visuals over here if I want to make it like less opaque and more opaque or things like that, and hit done. And that zone will show up there right now. So this zone that I created over here, it's not selectable from the 3D view because it's being projected on terrain. It became a part of the terrain. So if I want to edit specifically the shape of the zone, I need to go into my model browser, into the site planning, and then find the zone over here in my project setup. And then I'll be able to edit that, okay? And edit the sketch and make it differently and so on and so forth. Cool. So this is like a great tool because it can be used on several other things. Before I move on to the different use for that, I want to show that you can also define the start and end date for this. You can also define if you want to project or not on the terrain. But one great use case for the zoning tool is to create roads and other types of access points and things like that. So I'm going to use another zoning over here. And let's say that I want to create a road from this point all the way to this point over here. So I'm going to change my view to 2D, and I'm going to go and do a little curve over here with my arc.
While you do that, I'm going to talk about use cases again. So we get asked a lot about making roads because there are often temporary roads that are through the construction process that may not be covered in the design documentation because you kind of have like a final as-built design, and we have some roads in the catalog but wasn't really working the grid. So this is a good kind of workaround to use the zones as roads, as Pedro will show, to show temporary things that are coming and going throughout the job that may not be in the drawings or in the model when you import it.
Yeah. And in this case over here, I'm just creating like kind of like a dirt road path, but I could create this and be a little bit creative. And let's say that I want to make this as asphalt, for example. Like I'm just gonna color this in a different color. Just bring this over to this view, and I can put in like a line over here in the bottom, in the middle. So if I go into logistics and facilities, routes and paths, and do colored line, I can just draw a line that will be kind of like showing the same path over here. And that line, if I hit confirm, will show up like that. And I can like create like something that looks like more like an asphalt, right? And if you do want to be creative, you can just go ahead and place in a F1 racing car over here, right? So this is one possibility that you can play around.
And if you want to get really creative, you can use the visual graph to actually make that F1 car drive down the road. You really want to go have an F car race.
If we want to go to the next level, right? So yeah, so zones can be now used for projection on the terrain. So you can create your roads, you can create paths like that. You can create, of course, like areas for storage and so on and so forth. One of the coming updates for the zonings that we are already working on, it's already ready on our testing environment, is that the zones will come with a label as well. So you define what is the name of that zone. It's going to show up over here in the middle.
Can you show quickly the label? So not every, I mean, it's fairly new, so not everyone will know. Right now you can just do the label, but soon we'll be able to combine the best of these two worlds into one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So you can now place a label over here, and the labels, you can storage area. You can also do that to edit them. You can also go over here now, your model browser, and they will show up in here, right? So this is how you go in and edit these kind of stuff. Because once you project them in the ground, they are not selected on the 3D environment. The same thing as drawings, right? So when you project a drawing on the ground, they cannot be selected from the 3D view.
I believe we are going to add that soon, though. I think Shane mentioned that. So that's something that we're going to make it selectable from the 3D view.
Yes. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to move on to one of our greatest features that we just recently released, that is the texture import with FBX models, right? So a lot of people ask like, hey, I have a drone scan over here of my site and I want a better representation of my surroundings than the white beauties that shows up automatically, right? So if you do have things like that, you can import that into cmBuilder now. So this is an example of a 3D model that is created from a drone scan, right? So you can import these now with like a very good quality of those textures and the shapes that are in there. And from here, it's not just like, not just the import as a reference, but you can also author and use this in your plan. So for example, if I want to place in a spider crane over here on the top, I can just go in and type spider, and then bring a spider crane over here and really check if with this spider crane I can make the picks that I want, and where are the references that I have over here that I need to take care of. Like, oh, I have a little concrete part going on over here, and so on and so forth, right? Let's say that I want to create some fall protection over here on the top. I'm gonna go ahead and go into my 2D view and do the same thing that we discussed on the other one, and project this view over here on that part. And when I look for my 3D, oops, let me zoom in the thing over here. Need to change this to follow plane, so we will follow that area over there on the top. So now I have.
Let me just chime in. So existing conditions on your demolition phase, if you have it, it's really great. You can start to kind of sequence that out and work. So the big differentiator from cmBuilder perspective is not just to view plenty of viewers that you can view a mesh of a drone scan. It's being able to author on top of it and right in the browser, which is really useful, and then start linking that to your 4D or some 3D site logistics. Which is great. Sorry to cut you off. It's just I know we're running a little short on time, and we still have plenty of goodies planned. But yeah, so if basically we take a FBX mesh file. So we're still working on the wiki page or the page in the user guide. But essentially, if you're using Recap or Ferrocene, or if you're drone deploy, these types of things, and you just need to get your scan into an FBX mesh file. If you have any questions, let us know. We can help you. But there's a number of like recap exports to FBX, the mesh, for example.
Yeah.
And then once you have that, you can bring it into cmBuilder. But if you have any questions, just let us know. We're happy to help you.
Yeah, these FBX imports can come from several sources, right? So drone is one option. Another option is like getting this from the web, from like a specific third-party database or something like that. There are a lot of repositories online where people like sell their drone scans and things like that from cities, or you can purchase a specific area. So this is just an example that I got from an open source location where the person just went through and like created this shape and made it available online for everyone to use. So you can really like start working with a real city right now. There are other methodologies as well that you can get this, where you can extract the 3D shapes directly from your graphic card, right? So there are a couple, if you search online, like how to export, like in YouTube, how to export an FBX mesh from other services, you will find some videos where you can do that, right? So you simply like extract that and create that FBX. Okay, and I think we talked a lot already about the simple masking updates. So Javi, let's go into the commenting feature now. Right, so commenting is a great feature. We also like released this very recently. So for example, if I go in here now and look at this view, like Javi is in the same scenario as me right now as a multiplayer, I can click on this button over here on the side. That's the commenting feature, and I can add a comment at this location. So the comment, once I click to add it, by default, it will show up in the middle of my map. But don't worry, you don't need to move that over. You just need to click again to add that comment to the location where you selected, right? So over here, I'm gonna ping in Javi over here. I'm gonna just tag him in the comment and say, let's check structural requirements for this scaffolding, right? So I can, once I add that, Javi just got pinged. He received an email saying that like there is a comment with his name in there, and he can open the site plan and visualize that right now. And he can just come in here and place a comment himself, like just to talk.
So I just got an email and I see this, and I'm gonna add one back to you, Pedro, so it'll pop up while everyone can see. It's say check gate location. And the nice thing about this is for asynchronous and synchronous collaboration. So synchronous is that we're in the same scenario at the same time. You have a site logistics, or sorry, superintendent on site, you're in the office, architects at their office. Hey, just join this link like Google Docs. Let's work through it, and you can make changes live. So as Pedro makes changes or I make change, it's happening live, you can just resolve things, or asynchronous, which is like I just log in when I get a chance. I review the site logistics plan, I throw a couple comments, and I put it in Pedro's queue, right? So he has a queue to resolve a number of issues with regards to the site logistics or the sequencing. Hey, we need to add scaffolding here, or maybe we have a safety concern to assess based on the crane location, hoist location, etc. So you can have multiple people go in there and just drop in comments while they're not working in the same session at the same time. This to me is what hopefully my big thing to drive home from these power users that you guys are joining. Thank you. Is this is something I really think you should try to keep playing with. Our industry has been riddled with a file-based world. You know, attaching emails and sending back and forth all over the place. And you know, Procore and other platforms like this are starting to change that. But I think this is like this kind of multiplayer mode. We think could be a really big thing for you if you can start to get collaboration around the site logistics and the 4D much better. I think our plan is in the future to also pretty near future to be able to do this on shared links as well. So right now you have to have an account to do this, but like in the future you'll be able to share your link, you know, your final presentation, and then it will show up as an anonymous user, but they'll be able to add comments as well.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Javi. Yeah, so I'm just gonna answer two questions that showed up over here in the QA. So Mariana is asking where we are, where you can see all the shortcuts compile. It's very simple. Just click over here in the question mark, go into key shortcuts, and these are the shortcuts that are available right now, right? So again, if you have any other shortcuts that you want to be in our library of shortcuts, just let us know in the QA or send us an email with that. You can put in also like a feature request for that same thing over here. Just go over here in feature request and just say like shortcuts I want and so on and so forth, right? So this is one thing that you can do. And also we have another question over here for Daniel is like when there will be a separate training session for visual graphics. That's an amazing suggestion. We will probably be doing that once we polish a couple of things related to the visual graphics that we have right now. Some items are a bit complicated to create and we just want to make them simpler. And once we have those kind of like polished, we will create a very specific training session just for that.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. Why don't you go to show where the crane is? Just for those who don't even know how to get to it, if you want to play around with it. Again, treat this as a bit of a beta. We're still working on some stuff and adding more nodes. But if you go to where the crane is, double click a crane, and then you're going to see visual graph. So any resource in there, you'll be able to go here, edit graph. It brings in your visual graph. So basically, this is where if anyone's used Grasshopper or Dynamo in the past, they want to start kind of creating some simulations to make the crane move or to make cars drive, stuff like that. You can start playing around with it. But again, this is early days. So we just had our own hackathon actually recently where people created some pretty amazing things. But if you have questions, just reach out to us and we'll help you with that.
Cool. I think we're in the break of the hour over here.
Yes, we have 2 minutes. Any last questions before we sign off? Pedro, did you have anything else on the agenda you were trying to get to it?
Oh yeah, there's one last thing. It just got pushed over here to the next page and I didn't see it. Okay, so the last thing that I want to leave you everyone with towards the end is our cover image, right? So right now, if I open the project over here and I go back into the project page, you see that all of these scenarios doesn't have an image to it. But if I go back and go into my presentation and markup, now I have the ability, if I go over here on the top, on the first milestone, there is one thing over here that's called the cover slides. That's things that you see first, right? So while active, this is just my personal preference. I'm gonna go back into the last milestone, and then I'm gonna create a camera angle for this area over here. And now this capture camera angle, I can define that as my presentation cover slide. So if I go back over here on the top, the cover slide, that became my cover slide. So there are two things that this affects. One is if you send a a link to a person and that person opens that link in milestone presentation mode, this is the first milestone that they are going to see, right? So the first image that they're going to see. Also, if the person that opens the scenario right away, this is the first thing that they're going to see, right? So that's the initial default angle of view. But yeah, you can see right away over here that this is already happening. It's just taking some time to load, where like we are positioning the camera on that default slide that I created with all the parts.
This got a lot of feedback from folks that when they share the link, you know, the first camera might be a little far away and things like this. So this is where you can just like say, there's two good use cases for the shared link being like, here's my like, you know, isometric nice view of whatever we want like this. Or another use case is like when you're going into a meeting with a client, pre-con meeting, and maybe you have 10 slides that you just want to work through in the job, like you like you might have done this in PowerPoint or something in the past. You could just have that as your top of your slides. Just open up in presentation and markup and be like 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, boom, boom. We're actually going to make a blog post next week on kind of like some ways to add more simple tools in cmBuilder to help with pre-construction meetings with clients and stuff. Just and using the presentation and markups one of them.
And the second thing that this cover slide affects is that now if I go back to my project page and refresh this view over here, you see that this became the image for that scenario. Oh, we have another question over here. Did you mention exporting animations in video formats? This actually became such a big feature, such a big request that we bumped this into higher in our roadmap. And it's one of the features that we are working on next as well, like the export MP4 directly from Builder. At the moment, you can use a screen recording software to just grab that animation and so on and so forth. But that will be available in the product in the coming updates.
Okay, I know we're at the hour. Maybe we'll hang out just for a couple more minutes in case there's any other questions. But I'll wrap it. Thanks so much for coming. We're going to keep doing this every month. If you have any suggestions on how we can improve these things, please feel free to reach out to us. And hopefully we're bringing good value with that. So thanks for taking the time.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks everyone.
Outro music? Pedro, you don't have any outro music?
Oh, let me grab my guitar.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, that's what we should next time. You actually play the guitar on the way out. Pedro's quite a talented individual here. He's a guy who wears many hats. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining.